Well, good morning all. This is Patricia and I am traveling for history. On today's show, I'm going to share with you the two types of videos I film that have garnered single-digit views. I'm going to tell you what those two categories are. I'm going to share with you some backstories behind them. I'm going to tell you why I filmed them, and at the very end, I'll let you know if I plan to film them into the future. In fact, how about right now in the comments below, you post whether or not you think I'm going to continue. You know, will I or won't I? So go ahead and do that now. And those two topics that have garnered, you know, I can only hope for 9 for most of them. They are state historic markers and war memorials. Let me tell you more about state historic markers. The Vermont legislature approved and unveiled the state historic markers back in 1947. These items commemorate people, places, events, things, here in, I'm talking only in Vermont, and these things are of regional, state, and or national significance. To date, there are about 310 around the state of Vermont, and if you're one of the 9 views, then you likely know I have filmed quite a few. I don't actually know how many there are, but it's enough. They are very obvious. In fact, I can spot those things like a mile away. Oh, there's one there. So what do they look like? Well, they stand on at the very top of a state historic marker is the Vermont state seal in gold. Below that, in the on the very bottom, there's the state seal right there. Freedom and unity, in case you can't quite see it because it's kind of small there. Below that is the body of the the body of the marker, where the magic happens. And there's another state historic marker right there. So we can see the state seal is at the top, different shape than the first one, but still. And then the body of it is the wording in the middle. And that green pole you see there is also part of the state historic marker. It's all cast aluminum, and what I can tell you is, although aluminum is a lot lighter metal, it's still really heavy, and I'll explain why. I know that in just a few minutes. Now, if you are interested in posting a state historic marker on something that you know is historically significant, then you would fill out a form. It is a lengthy form for the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation. So you would talk about why this is important. You would give you would type up what it is and why it's important and where it should go and who's going to write it, the credentials of the person who's going to write it, and then the Vermont. The Historic Preservation Division will determine if this is something they want, and then they do all the background work. They do the casting and all that good stuff. But the marker itself, and this part I find really fascinating because I think I'm a history nerd, is the body of the marker. There are very specific requirements for that and rules. So for instance, the characters are gold and there's raised lettering. The characters overall, you have 765 characters. Characters include the letters, numbers, punctuation, and spaces. So where it says the Old Chapel right there, there is a space above that, and then below it, under the year range, there's a space, there's the body, and then below the body, which is not evident on this particular one, is that at the very bottom it will say, typically, Vermont Division of Historic Preservation. So there's a space between the bottom of the body and then the very bottom where it says what I just said. Now, the lettering for the piece at the bottom does not count in the 765 characters. In fact, there's usually the Vermont Division of Historic Preservation, and then right next to it a year. I believe that's the casting date, but I couldn't actually confirm it from where I was looking at. So if you know, please put in the comments below, but it would stand to reason that be a casting date. There are very specific rules about how to write these markers. If you're going to use a title, let's say doctor, you use a capital D, lowercase r with a period. These words are all abbreviated because you have 765 characters to put all this information on. Now, these markers have two sides. I'm just going to call it a blurb. If the blurb is enough for one side, just one side, it will be repeated on the back. Now, if you're lucky enough to find one of those signs that has a lot of verbiage, then the rest of it will be continued on the back. I have encountered a few of those, and I just get giddy with excitement because, again, I like that stuff. If you're going to use a person's name who has a nickname, like Snowflake Bentley, Snowflake is in quotation marks. You don't use commas, like, Howard Clark Jr. There's usually a comma between the last name and Jr. No commas like that, because you're preserving space. So there's a format that the state wants you to follow, and you will follow it, period. They do recommend, also the state recommends that you write more information than less, because there are people on the other side who work for the Division of Historic Preservation who will edit as well. So it's a collaborative effort. And what I thought was the most interesting piece of all of this was the very strong suggestion that you make the most impactful piece of information in that first sentence, because these are historic markers that are on the side of the road. They're on the side of the road, most of them, and this one was too, but the road was dead the day I was there filming. So people are driving by, see these things, and they're reading. They have time for one sentence, so you want to make that the big bang moment. The hope is that people will want to pull over and read the whole marker. You know, since I filmed them, that I do that, happily, actually. I have found that most historic markers are perpendicular to the road. This is the road, this is the sign, because you want to be able to read it as you're driving by. I have filmed at least one that was parallel to the road. There's no way, if you're as you drive by, that you're going to see your big. You may see it. It's likelier you won't, but you may see it, but you're not going to be able to read it, because if you're driving, you're not going to be looking to the side. That's just foolhardy. And for that one, since it was in a weird place on the property, that I actually had to stand in the road to film it. Thankfully, it was Thanksgiving morning and nobody was out. And then because it was a two-sided sign, I had to walk up on a hill, and it was a terrible placement. But I mean, the state determines that. Excuse me. They determine where to put the sign. It's usually on public property, but it could be on private property, which means permission and all that good stuff. But the state really wants us to read these things because people have taken the time to write them. Now, I'll explain a little bit about why I know how heavy those signs are, and they come in one piece. It's 20 years ago now. I'm still floored by how many decades we're talking. But 20 years ago, I was on the board of Preservation Burlington, and our executive director was instrumental in getting a state historic marker approved for the house on the corner of Main and South Willard Streets in Burlington, Vermont. If you are a Champlain College student, you know it as a dormitory. If you were a student at the University of Vermont, you may remember it as Phi Gamma Delta Fiji, which was a fraternity house. But if you love history, then you likely know that the house was originally built for Major Brevet General William Wells. And his son-in-law, the man who became his son-in-law, was Dr. Horatio Nelson Jackson. And that name should be familiar to you as well, or maybe, because he was the first person to drive from California to Vermont, so cross country in the U.S. Mind you, there weren't really roads, more like stagecoach routes. But he was the first one. He took a $50 wager, and he won the wager. So two men who were very well known. The general, as I recall, was the most promoted soldier during the American Civil War. He went in a private and came out this Major Brevet General. So our executive director sent me the information provided on the state historic marker by he may have been a military historian, and it was all about the general, which makes sense because very prominent man. That said, Dr. Jackson deserved to be known, and quite frankly, so did Bertha, the daughter of William Wells. So anyway, I wrote a portion of the marker. I reworked some of the information about the general, and included the general, the fact that he had a daughter, the fact that she was married to this Dr. Jackson, and at the very bottom is information, on the back side is information about more information, military information about the general. So it's really kind of fun, excuse me, that I have intimate knowledge of a state historic marker, and it may be why I hold them so fondly in my heart. Oh yeah, see, in this one here, the statement below isn't included in the word count, the Vermont Division for Historic Preservation. So I film state historic markers because they are these history snippets that make me happy. I was driving on, God knows where, I don't know where it was some small town. And I was going quite kind of slow. I think it might have been 25 miles per hour there. And I noticed, since I was going so slow and my car was the only one on the road, I was looking back and forth across the roads, and I was thinking that a couple of buildings looked like they had started life as boarding houses. So I paid closer attention to the houses as well, to the actual little houses, and I thought to myself, that looks like worker housing. As I'm approaching a bridge, just a regular flat bridge, no structure, not a covered bridge, I noticed what looked like falls off to the right. And then, lo and behold, was a state historic marker, which talked about the industry there, powered by the falls. Enough industry that there were boarding houses built. First of all, I love to know that I was right. My instincts were on, were right on target there. But it's such interesting things. I mean, you really have to be impactful. In 765 characters, you have to be clear, concise, and interesting. It's mind-blowing, to be honest. Now this, I happened to film this. This one is located at the Calvin Coolidge State Historic Site in Plymouth, Vermont. And, you know, spiritualist, reformer, that one hasn't gone live yet. But I do love those things. And you can see the post here is actually, you can see it's aluminum, the color of aluminum. The other one that was green for the old chapel, I had never seen one in green before that I can recall. Because when I think of these things, I think of the aluminum pole. And they're long. I had a minivan back then, and it was slid as far forward as it could go. So it's, and that one's also kind of, it's on the side of a road, but it's kind of off to the side. I kind of had to stand, if I wanted to get in front of it, I had to stand in tall grass. So I just filmed it from the side. So let's pivot now to war memorials, because I filmed them as well. I'm actually deeply disappointed at how few people watch war memorial movies, videos. Now, maybe it's because we've had endless wars here in the U.S., you know, because diplomacy, I guess, is dead. But war memorials are, all this paperwork in front of me. I look very learned today. But so a war memorial can be a building, a monument, a statue, or other edifice to commemorate those who served. And now in this particular one, which is also the Calvin Coolidge State Historic Site in Plymouth, Vermont, these were men who served during the First World War, 1914, 1918. Now the two at the very top have stars beside their names, and typically when you see stars or asterisks, it means they died fighting in the war. When these are smaller monuments like this, I do like to say their names. It's kind of interesting, I guess, on that one, because I believe in that idea of if the name is spoken, then they're not forgotten. So, for what that's worth. But a war memorial is a memorial, is a commemorative object intended to remind us of the people who served in and died as a result of war. War memorials may take many forms, but common to all of them is the intention that they remind us of those we have lost to war. Architecturally, most war memorials were relatively conservative in design, aiming to use established styles to produce a tragic but comforting, noble, and enduring commemoration of the war dead. We can see that this is a bronze plaque that is set in granite. and it tells us at the bottom, died in service. That's what the star means. I usually see asterisks, and this may have been the first time I actually saw stars. But an asterisk, the aster part of asterisk actually means star. So I film state historic markers and war memorials because of their impact. They both serve a similar service, that they're honoring events and people, places of historical significance. Just as war memorials do the same thing, but war memorials specifically honor people. And in fact, if you are looking for historic markers, at least in Vermont, oftentimes war memorials are coupled under them. And I find with the state historic markers that I am energized to conduct more research about something because I was so interested and amazed in the topic I read about. And as for war memorials, I am moved by them. Most of my mother's brothers had served during World War II. And there are family stories about one of my uncles who fought in the Battle of the Bulge. He joined the Army when he was 15 years old, and why his parents allowed him to go is still beyond me. That's a piece of history that's lost to time. But he survived the Battle of the Bulge. I'll give you the only gruesome piece I know about that. He survived, but he awoke. This is the family story. I cannot confirm. But apparently he awoke under a pile of bodies because they thought he was dead. A war memorial doesn't say that. But that Uncle Bob's story is always in the back of my mind when I look at a war memorial, and certainly when I film it. I am sometimes inspired to conduct more research, depending upon what I've read. And I would hope that others would be interested. Now, sometimes people do watch. So I do have double-digit views of items in these categories, but overall, these are single-digit views for two things I consider important. This video hasn't gone live yet either, but interesting stuff. Things that I would never know about if they weren't encapsulated right here. Snippets, really, just these history snippets. So at the end of the day, will I still continue to film these items that get such low viewership? And if you put in the comments below, my God, why would she? I've already explained why I would. They're historically significant and they move me. So if you answered yes, you are correct. I plan to continue to film them. The one that you saw in the old chapel, I just filmed last week. Actually, in the same with that war memorial that you've been looking at. That one I also filmed last week because they are important to me. And quite frankly, I feel that it's important for all of us to remember these people. In fact, let me share with you this one quotation I found about war memorials. This was quoted from, this quotation comes from His Excellency, the Governor Sir Alexander Hoare Ruthven, at the unveiling of the SA National War Memorial 25 April 1931. I'm just going to read it. Quote, "It is not only for ourselves that we have erected this visible remembrance of great deeds, but rather that those who come after us and had not experienced the horrors of war or realized the wanton destruction and utter futility of it all, may be inspired to devise some better means to settle international disputes other than by international slaughter." I always hope that that kind of thinking finally comes to mind. But yes, I do plan to continue to film state historic markers and war memorials because I like them. I like state historic markers. I just love those things. And war memorials because it just feels like the right thing to do. I do get comments on some war memorials where there are younger, newer wars, fresher wars. I have filmed a handful of those, and sometimes I get comments about, oh, I know that person, or I'm that person, or some such thing. So, well, here we are, and we've spent another 30 minutes together today. Truly appreciate your coming along with me, and my gosh, please watch those 2 videos. Watch all my videos, but certainly watch the State Historic Markers if you want a snippet of fascinating stuff. And war memorials because it's a way to honor those who have served. And until I see you again, this is Patricia, and I'm traveling for history. And I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.